Bearing witness, the politics of rage, hate, and grievance on the road to theocratic rule. Bearing witness means, for me, blending testimonial with witnessing as a journalist might, and who has to answer the questions in their text: who, what, when, where, how, and why. In this fashion, I try to have a balance between the subjective and the objective, and as transparent as possible. I have been tracking and studying Trumpist MAGA, Make America Great Again, politics for about 5 years, disarticulating Trump from the crowds that followed him on the one hand, and the modes of his personality renewal, prepping for his new bid for power. Trump takes some of his cues from the crowd. He was not always anti-gay or anti-abortion, and now he is. Soon he will also say he is anti-LGBTQ. He hasn't been asked that. It has taken some time to assemble the following claims about a socio-political and cultural movement that is well-funded, organized, coordinated by so-called dark money donors, lobbyists, operatives, and activists. The beginnings of the contemporary evangelical movement got a solid political foothold under the Reagan administration. The evangelicals began organizing from the beginnings of the civil rights movements of that in 1955. I dated there with the Brown versus Board of Education and the lynching of Emmett Till. Though from the moment Roe versus Wade was passed in 1973 by the Supreme Court and the Bakke case of 1978 challenging affirmative action decision, the backlash kicked off against all of the usual suspects: racialized minorities, all women, LGBTQAI+. Now, I am very emboldened, if you will, by the current prosecutor Jack Smith for the fact that he is investigating the special prosecutor is working to expose a broad national conspiracy to keep Trump in power, says and it is a pretty broad national conspiracy touching on any aspect of election meddling or election interference. I was very happy to see that Jack Smith, the special prosecutor, is reading into the possibility of a national conspiracy in the electoral system. That is true, absolutely true. There is a conspiracy around it. But however, it is bigger than that, and that is what concerns me so much, and this is why I'm writing this material that really takes me out of my comfort zone, which is poetry. The mega movement strategies, whose endgame has been to roll back all civil rights, embraced a long-range plan of incrementalism. Their attack on these rights has been incremental in practice for a minimum of 5 decades. It is a religious fundamentalist movement that actually is working towards taking the so-called rule of law hostage in order to take over the country. Whatever the basic ethics, protocols, and civility pertinent to governance and the rule of law may have been, they are now trampled, discarded, and actually held in contempt, as you can see with the events of January 6, 2021, not to speak of the promotion of bullying, nasty, cruel, and mean speech in political discourse. That was not part of my introduction into the U.S. political scenes in the 1960s and 70s. Trump, who is now the cult leader, and most scholars of authoritarian rule call it a cult leader-follower relation, continues to lead the way. There is a reckless disregard for the majority of people in this country, which is consistent with MAGA sentiments. The cult leader continues to promote the idea that Americans want a cultural and socio-political renewal, and that, however, those Americans are actually a minority of the population. Some call it the tyranny of the minority. That is usually what a dictator or autocrat is, one who rules through a supportive minority, many a dictator in Latin America and elsewhere, for example. It is, however, a substantial white, heterosexist, Christian supremacist one, organized and funded by their donuts. The most visible players in the MAGA backlash are often those that attend Trump's rallies and, of course, some well-known Republican members of Congress whom you can identify by going to their fundraising political action conferences or the Freedom of Caucus in Congress. As a group, these players are engaging in mass hysteria, if not psychosis, though the propensity to conspiracy theories like QAnon without evidence may be part of the structure of feeling that guides their behavior. The promotion of confusion and chaos is part of the plan. It keeps the people distracted. It makes it hard to make sense of activities and the agitprop of Asian provocateurs. The rallying crowd is not distracted. This is their show. These are their leaders. There is a minimum of 5 tiers to the MAGA revolutionary movement at hand. 1, there is a corporate world that provides the funding for this movement. The 2010 Supreme Court decision in the Citizens United case sealed the freewheeling financial encroachment into U.S. politics and its systems. 2, there is the political Republican class that is enabling what we see unfolding before us every day, both in the states and federal state. 3, there is the academic collaboration of institutions that encompass think tanks, churches, scholars, and some universities. There are the multiple forms of media deployed to promote disinformation, and not least 5, the citizenry that forms the so-called base of the Republican Party, which the Southern Poverty Law Center says includes over 1,000 hate groups that move in and out of the rallies and promote violence, as was seen throughout the Black Lives Matter marches in summer of 2020 after the killing of George Floyd by the Minneapolis police force, and of course the infamous assault on the Capitol on January 6, 2021. All of these entities give structure to what I call the insurgent MAGA revolutionary backlash that is being perpetrated this time against asylum seekers, women, people of color in general, LGBTQAI people. Not all white people are our adversaries, but a minimum of half of Anglo-Europeans are our adversaries. The Republican political class is terrified that they will never win an election again, so they add fuel to the fires by gerrymandering and reallocating the vote to white voters. In that way, they have control over state legislatures and the federal government. To this group, we are the enemy. These folks are the kind of folk that say you are with us or against us. Actually, most heterosexist white nationalist Christian patriarchs and their handmaidens, plus some of color who accompany them, see the rest of us as the enemy to their zealotry and conservative pursuits. The endgame is to take control of the federal government and the nation state under the pretense that they will have been taken over to democratic processes and the legal systems available to them. There is enough truth in the leader's claim of going through channels, so to speak, that it is an arduous task to unmask the fraudulent tactics, and as you can see on TV, justice is slower than lava flowing down the mountain. These activist politicos on the ground gather round the voting machines are standing guard to generate movidas a la Latinx or Latin America, i.e. Mexico, Peru, Colombia, Nicaragua, Guatemala, El Salvador. It happens in all of the Americans, including the United States. The U.S. has always claimed exceptionalism. Well, it's eroded big time. What is wanted is the appearance of legality and plausible deniability. As such, the incremental approach to destroy the internal structures of the nation has been brilliant. This backlash began during and in the aftermath of the civil rights movements, as I have stated. Let's put it between 1955 and 1975, with the start of the desegregation of schools in the South, including Texas. These movements, initiated by African Americans, were quickly joined by other minorities of color, people of Mexican descent, Puerto Ricans, Native Americans, and Asian Americans, feminists, LGBTQ+, and anti-Vietnam activists of the time. Unfortunately, none of these groups attempted to form a national coalition, nor develop solidarity amongst themselves. I have no clue at this time whether they can come together, along with those Anglo-Europeans who are not part of the insurgent MAGA revolutionary movement. It is the accomplishments and civil rights gained by these earlier movements of the 60s and 70s by men and women of color, white feminists, LGBTQAI, that are on the chopping block, and they simultaneously undertake the construction of a dominant white heterosexist supremacist Christian nationalism that will amount to a theocracy if one can read the current tea leaves through the lens of religious zealots who mask their claims in scientific garb or under the guise of against their Christian beliefs. Since I receive emails from Faithful America, Christians united against the white nationalist types, it is not all Christians who hate and terrorize us, only some. It is a kind of parallel to Israel. Not all Israelis hate, kill, and terrorize Palestinians, but enough do so to keep crushing them with the complicity of the United States. In the U.S., the point is to destroy secularity as a political value. Some zealots have gone on record stating that what is wanted is a Christonomic revival, akin to the movements of the clerics in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th century. Today, they are passing off religiosity as freedom of speech under the First Amendment. In effect, they have put religion on the Supreme Court dockets. Alito is the leader of the Christian Catholic cult in the court, along with Amy Coney Barrett, a charismatic Catholic, and Clarence Thomas, the colorblind advocate that got his wish. Together, these lead the battle against abortion, contraception, non-heterosexual practices, all of which they disapprove of according to the King James Bible. As for Clarence Thomas, who says he would take up colorblindness as if we were sightless, he has succeeded in getting rid of affirmative action for racialized minorities. The military colleges and universities will not be blocked from using affirmative action for their recruitment. So cynicism punctuates the work of these people, and it is a big part in these movilas. The Trump cult magistas want to eliminate the doctrine of separation of church and state. Frankly, I think that the aim to blend Christian church and state is a veiled movida tactic against Muslims and Jews as well, not to speak of other lesser-known sacred texts and religions. Evangelicals have to secure their Christian claims of faith and freedom. It may well be their faith and their faith-based freedom that is a theocracy, freedom under one faith and flag. However, the majority of us do not share those values which they would impose on us. It is a double articulation of goals, getting rid of the achievements of the civil rights movements and constructing what they want, a theocratic state ruled by biblical values in accordance with their desired political interpretations, arrangements, and goals. We can discern the patterns in the rulings of the Supreme Court as they accelerate the process. The Supreme Court and quite a bit of the federal judicial system have been captured by right-wing operatives like Leonard Leo, who recently got a donation of $1.5 billion for his work. A lot of this work was done under Reagan, Bush, and Trump administrations, more so than the other administrations. However, Check it out. He is the founder and CEO of the extreme right-wing Federalist Society and a few other organizations like the National Association of Scholars and Alliance for Freedom. They have scholarships for workshops through which they can teach how to introduce Christianity into the law and legal statements, as well as how to rearrange U.S. history in general. For the MAGA world, the history of the United States began in 1776. From a native point of view, that is absolutely laughable. From an African American point of view, that is actually trying to evade history as well. In brief, they are constructing the world they want, and it is okay with most of the GOP and their plutocrats, that is the billionaires, who actually rule the economic world globally and place their bets on the political candidate that will service them. All of their NGOs and organizations have catchy names. Take, for instance, Moms for Liberty, just recently unveiled in 2021 in Florida. In less than 2 years, they have recruited over 250 chapters in more than 40 states, including California. However, they dedicate themselves to defrauding women and girls who are desperately seeking relief from unwanted or toxic pregnancies or seeking contraceptives or prenatal care. These moms offer lots of counseling, prayers, and orphanages for kids. Ohio has set up a drop box for unwanted babies. Their praxis reminds me of my grandmother's time, or even before that. One might say they are DeSantis' handmaidens, a la Margaret Atwood, for the envisioned future exemplified by his law-making politics in Florida. These moms also go to do agitprop in school boards by banning books. Some of these moms are vicious with librarians, with phone harassment and verbal abuse. They are also harassed teachers, and many are quitting rather to put up with these mom suckers like pit bulls with lipstick. And then, to quote Sarah Palin, and then there is a question of guns. One can say that the GOP wants to arm as many citizens as they can in order to arm them for the insurgency they are counting on. And the Supreme Court has facilitated this with their rulings on guns just recently. All red states now have permitless open carry guns, or soon will have. They are rushing to that. Deregulation is big time at the Supreme Court. Deregulating clean air and water, wetlands, dishonoring treaties with Native Americans, with the continued dispossession and rape of their lands, as if to say there is no such thing as climate change, for example, and the people be damned. You can begin to discern an issue pattern. If the MAGA people are against it, the odds are that it is a question of value for the rest of us. Check that out. In the meantime, we are treated to a litigious pandemonium throughout the nation. The leaders of these threatening events, one can say freely without contradiction, are white, heterosexist, male supremacists, and supporters who are very fond of harassing anyone. The horrid, hateful behavior can best be exemplified at this time by Republican Senator from Alabama, Tommy Tuberville, who is holding hostage over 200 military promotions until the Pentagon changes its abortion policy, which facilitates the reproductive health of their female soldiers. More cynicism, perhaps? Perhaps for Jesus? No doubt.